object is an attempt to detonate a bomb on the Indian Army convoy. The accused Samir, the accused Sohail, tried to bomb Indian Army convoy after receiving fundings from various countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh on 15th August 2015. That was their main objective, and there was a meeting of mind and agreement between all the accused parties to do so. Uh, the accused Kalu Mama used to transfer money, transfer counterfeited money to the accused A1 and A2 so that he could transfer it to Pulwama, which could be used to buy the requisite arms and ammunitions to attack on the army. There was unanimity among the respondents to do so because the respondents clearly had the knowledge of the main object. During interrogation, both accused A1 and A2 stated unequivocally that they had to give money back to Peter A4 so that he could purchase the requisite weapons. They further admitted that FICN currency will be used to detonate a bomb against an Indian army which will be bombed by 15th August. Thus, there was a clear knowledge of the object and there was an agreement to do so. The agreement to do so could be proved by their actions. They all partook in the crime. They all had their own roles. That's why the prosecution asks the Honorable Court to punish the accused under Section 120B of the IPC. Moving on, the accused parties are also guilty under Section 121 of the IPC, which seeks to punish anyone who wages or attempts to wage war against the government of India or abates to do the same. The expression waging war means and can only mean waging war against the government of India in a manner which is usual in war. It was said in the judgment of State versus Navjot Sandhu that the term wages war against the government naturally import a person airing himself in defiance of the government in like manner and by like means as any foreign enemy would do. And how would a foreign nation attack India? What would be its aim? It would be to attack its system, shake the system, not only instill fear and panic among the authorities, but also among the common and general public of India. And the target of the attack chosen by the accused in this case was the Indian Army. Indian Army not only defend us from the external aggressors, but it also helps maintain law and order within the country when there is a civil unrest among us, internal civil unrest. And they tried, the army represents the government of India, its sovereignty, its security, and they tried attacking the army. If the attack had not failed, if it had succeeded, it would have created a war-like situation which could have lasted weeks or even months. So thus, by the target of attack they chose, which was the Indian Army, it is clear that they wanted to wage war against the government of India. It was not just a mere simple offense against the state in which they were aggressive. It was a clear-cut attack to wage war against the government of India to overawe the government. Thus, the prosecution asks the court to punish the respondents under Section 121 of the IPC. Again, Your Lordship, the respondents are also charged under Section 123 of the IPC, which states that whoever by any act or by illegal omission conceals the existence of a design to wage war against the government of India, intending by such concealment to facilitate or knowing it to be likely that such concealment will facilitate the waging of such war will be punished or should be punished. Now, I have already submitted that there was an attempt to wage war against the government of India. There was also an attempt to conceal or that attempt to wage war. The accused Kalu Mama, who when he was caught, he was questioned regarding the involvement of the role of accused Sohail A5, who was the main conspirator in this entire attempt to attack the government. But he gave very evasive responses to all the questions. The NIA writes in his charge sheet, quote, that it will not be out of place to note that he is referring to Kalu Mama, did not disclose NIA any specifics of whereabouts of Sohail. And because of this act of Kalu Mama, no damning evidence could be found because he had destroyed all the evidence. As a result, Sohail absconded. He escaped to Bangladesh, and the police was unable to locate Sohail. In this act of giving evasive answers and destroying evidences is clearly punishable under Section 123 of the IPC. Thus, the criminal acts done by the respondents in hiding and destroying of the evidence amounts to facilitate to the waging of war against the government of India and should be punished. Thank you, Your Honor.
Now
yes, please. Speaker number 2.
The council seeks permission to move forward with the next issue.
Yes, please. Go on.
So now I'm going to prove that the respondents are guilty of using and possessing forged or counterfeit currency notes or banknotes for an unlawful act. As the respondent were possessing and using high quality fake notes is illegal under sections 489B and 489C of IPC. Section 489B and 489C of IPC deals with economic crime involving forged or counterfeit money notes or banknotes. Justice Prasad said that production of counterfeit currency notes often stains the dissatisfaction with the country's growth, and it is therefore aimed at financially distinguishing and destabilizing the steady equilibrium of liquidity in the economy. The aim of legislature in adopting this provision is to stop the distribution of counterfeit notes by punishing any individual who, knowing or having cause to suspect the same to be forged, perform any act that might lead to their circulation. In this case, the bare reading of the complaint reveals the act under consideration in the statement fulfills the aforementioned criteria. The accused has engaged in the illegal possession and use of actual forged or counterfeit money or banknotes for an unlawful act. A witness told that two suspects were carrying fake Indian currency notes of rupees 2000 denomination having face value of equivalent to rupees 10 lakh carrying by two suspects. The witness also stated that the possession and using genuine forged of counterfeit currency notes or banknotes. And prosecution force also stated that during the search of their baggage, 250 notes of high quality fake Indian currency notes of rupees 2000 denomination having face value equivalent to rupees 5 lakh was recovered from black and maroon bag of accused Samir and Monu. He also stated that during the search, two suspects, Samir and Monu, were detained. Thus, from the above evidence, it is clearly seen that the respondents are guilty of unlawfully having and using forged or counterfeit money or banknotes. So, the council seeks permission to move forward with the next issue.
Please, go on.
So, now I am going to prove that an offense under Section 489 has been established. Because the respondent committed the crime of unlawfully utilizing real forged or counterfeit money or banknotes, the respondent has used the high-quality fake Indian currency notes to bomb an Indian army convoy in Pulwama. The following basic components are required to commit an offense under Section 489B. The notes in question is a currency or banknote. It was forged or counterfeited. The accused sold, purchased, or received it from anybody. The accused knew or had a cause to suspect it was forged. The respondent were using high-quality fake currency notes, which is the essential ingredient to constitute and establish an offense under Section 489B of IPC. While interrogation of Kalu Mama, he told that he had previously obtained FICN from Sohail for further sale and transaction. And Kalu Mama used to have regular communication and association with Peter, Samir, Monu, and Sohail. Secondly, the research revealed that Samir and Monu used to receive FICN shipments from Kaliachowk, Malda, and would travel in the public carriage of train since it was safer. They were linked as a part of a group that was involved in a criminal conspiracy to buy, obtain, transfer, and finance extraordinarily large amount of high-quality fake Indian currency notes for distribution across the nation. And when the accused sold, purchased, or received forged or counterfeit or banknotes from any other person, it falls inside the essential components to form or establish an offense under Section 489B of IPC. As a result, a Section 489B offense has been established. The council seeks permission to move forward with the next issue.
Please go on. Don't ask every time, you just move forward. Thank you.
So now I am going to prove that an offense under Section 489C of IPC has been established. It is humbly submitted before this honorable court that Section 489C has been established because the respondent was found guilty of possessing real forged or counterfeit money or banknotes for the purpose of committing an illegal act. To establish an offense under Section 489C, the following essential elements must be present. There is a note in question is a currency note or banknote. The note was forged or counterfeit. The accused has possession of the currency note or banknote. The accused intended to use the currency note or banknote as genuine. The accused knew or had a reason to believe the note was forged. Through this, we can see that knowing or having cause to think the cash notes or bank notes are forged or counterfeit is an offense under Section 489C. Selling, buying, receiving from any other person or otherwise trafficking in or using as genuine forged or counterfeit notes or banknotes where mens rea is involved is enough to constitute an offense under Section 489B IPC. And in this case, respondent have been charged under Section 489B of IPC as it consists all the necessary elements. Samir and Monu admitted to collecting these high quality fake Indian currency notes from their associate Kalu Mama in Kaliachok, Malda, West Bengal. They went on to say that FICN notes will be used to denote a bomb against an Indian army convoy on August 15, 2015, which shows that mens rea was involved. Now I'm going to prove that the respondent are liable under Section 201 of IPC, which deals with removing evidence of a crime or giving false information to a screen offender. This section deals with circumstances in which a person destroys evidence in order to avoid legal punishment for the offender. The accused in this case was apprehended, was found absconding, and it was later revealed that he committed suicide, resulting in evidence being destroyed. This section addresses the two sections of evidence disappearance and false information, focusing on the issue of evidence disappearance, which may include the following key elements. Evidence must be removed from the scene of the crime, which implies the crime must have occurred. The accused must be aware of the crime, and there must be a firm purpose to remove evidence in order to protect the offender from legal consequences. And here in the case, the Delhi police were aware of Peter since he was involved in illegal operations. Peter was discovered absconding when Delhi police raided his home and enterprise in Barod, Madhya Pradesh. A team of officers was dispatched to Rajasthan on June 19, 2015 to investigate and verify the facts. They confirmed that the sought suspect in this case was hospitalized with poisoning and died during the treatment at SK Hospital. Suicide was the cause of the death, which adversely affected the inquiry since it is now more difficult to identify and capture the gang cell that planned a bomb assault on the Indian Army Corps in Pulwama on August 15, 2015. Throughout this investigation, the Sohail was examined numerous times, but no tangible proof could be discovered since Kalu Mama has destroyed all evidence. When questioned regarding accused Sohail's involvement and role, accused Kalu Mama gave evasive answer. It's important emphasizing that he did not provide any information to NIS about Sohail's action, which resulted in evidence disappearance. As a result, the respondents are liable under Section 201 of IPC. Now, I'm going to prove that the respondent are guilty of terrorist attack activities as charged under Section 16, 17, 18, and 20 of UAPA of 1967. Your Lordship, Section 15 of UAPA is defined as whoever does any act with the intent to threaten the unity, integrity, security, and sovereignty of India, or with the intent to strike terror in the people of any section, the people in India by using bombs or other lethal weapon of whatever notion to cause or likely to cause over us by means of criminal force or attempt to do so is committing a terrorist attack. Because the accused parties have been using FICNs to raise funds for this activity for a long time. It was a well thought out plan. Sohail was in touch with senior Laskar Taiba member and was a well versed in bomb making, and it takes years to develop such a network of contact and expertise. Also, the accused parties attempted to ignite a bomb in the Indian Army Corps in case at hand. The respondent choice of target demonstrated their purpose to overthrow the government. The Indian Army is a critical component of the Indian country's defense and security. It depicts the country's strength, defense, and integrity. If the plan had worked, a war-like situation would have lasted for weeks or months. It would have terrified not only the government but all the entire Indian population. As a result, we can clearly argue that the respondent should be classified as terrorist by the court of law based on the respondent choice of target and the well thought out plan. As a result, the respondent should be punished under Section 16 of UAPA, which aims to penalize anyone who commits a terrorist act. Next, the respondent used high-quality FICNs to generate a fund for terrorist activities. In addition, the accused Monu admitted in his remarks that they used to receive fundings from terrorist acts from Bangladesh and Pakistan. This conduct of raising a sum for the intention of preparing a terrorist act is illegal under Section 70 of UAPA, and the respondent should be penalized for it. Respondent accused 1 and accused 2 were requited by respondent Kalu Mama, who is accused 3, for the commission of terrorist activities in the case at hand. According to Kalu Mama, disclosure, he received FICN's worth rupees 10 lakh from Sohail and sent it to Pulwana via Samir and Monu for Peter to collect. Also, as stated in the respondent confession, Samir and Monu attended All India Youth Conference and Sohail recruited them to work with him. And this act of recruiting people for terrorist act is punishable under Section 18 of UAPA. The respondent in this case were member of the organization. The received funds from Pakistan and Bangladesh, among other countries. One of the group member is good friend with a top Lashkar-e-Taiba member and well versed in bomb making techniques. The gang used to have and transfer high quality FICNs with the goal of attacking the Indian army convoy in Pulwana and intimidating the Indian government and people. These characteristics of the organization in which the respondent were involved are sufficient to show that the terrorist organization and they should be prosecuted under Section 20 of the UAPA 1967. The council seeks permission to move forward with the prayers.
Yes, please.
So, in light of the issue raised, arguments advanced and authorities cited, it is humbly submitted that the Honorable Court may be pleased to convict the accused for criminal conspiracy under Section 20 of IPC 1860, convict the accused for possessing counterfeit currency notes under Section 489B and 489C of IPC, convict the accused for attempt and failure to wage war against Government of India under Section 121 of IPC, convict the accused as they are guilty of for a charge of terrorist act under section 16, 17, 18 and 20 of UAPA 1967 and pass any other order that this honorable court may deem fit in the interest of justice, equity and good conscience. For this act of kindness, the petitioner shall duty bound forever pray.
Thank you. I think this is now the turn of the defense. Who is the speaker one?
Yes, sir. Just if you want to take a couple of minutes to evaluate your scores, you may take a minute or so.
No, I think I'm good. Money?
All right, sir. Then
Money?
Yes, sir. Let the defense counsel speak. Then we would be putting questions.
all right, sir.
Yes.
Should I start?
Yes, please.
Warm greetings, Your Lordship. We please the court and the council on behalf of the accused persons, that is Samir, Monu,
Are you-
Kalumama, Peter, and
Are you representing all the accused or some of the accused?
accused,
All the accused.
all the 5 accused.
Okay. Go on, please.
So, with the court's permission, I would like to reserve my last 2 minutes for the rebuttals.
Sure.
He honors the present case is against the 5 accused persons, well known as Samir, Monu, Kalumama, Peter, and Sohail. It is alleged by the state that they have acted in violation of the Indian Penal Code 1860 and the Unlawful Prevention Act 1997. Your Lordship, the Honorable Sessions Court enjoys the right to preside over this matter by the virtue of Section 28 in the Chapter 3rd of the Power of Courts of the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973. Section 28 of the CRPC states that sentences which High Court and Session judges may pass. A High
I
Court
think-
may pass.
Just hold on.
Yes, sir.
I think both the prosecution and accused has no dispute over the jurisdiction of this court, is it? Are you challenging the jurisdiction of this court?
No, sir.
No. Then go on with the facts. Facts and
Okay,
the
sure.
laws.
Should I
Rebuttal.
state the facts, sir?
Yes. Facts are not necessary, the facts exactly. What do you have to say in the main argument on the allegations? You can proceed with that.
Yes, sir. So, Your Honours, on the 24th of February 2015 at 9 in the morning, some secret information was received by the special cell of Delhi Police. That is, 2 suspects will be carrying the FICNs on 25th of February 2015 by the train going from Malda town to Delhi. Then on the very next day, as per the information received, the train was raided by the police. That is the general coach of number 2 of Faraka Express. That is train number 13413. On its arrival at the platform number 5 of the Old Delhi railway station on 25th of February 2015 at 10:55 hours. And then at that time, the FICNs of the total face value of 10 lakh rupees was recovered from the accused persons, namely Samir and Monu. After the recovery of all of the things obtained from them, the accused persons were arrested. So, Your Lordship, the further discussion is constructed on the provided facts. So, if the facts are clear, the council seeks permission to proceed with the arguments advanced.
Please go on.
Much obliged, Your Honor. Your Lordship, in regard to the findings of NIA, the following charges have been framed against the accused persons. And the very first charge that has been imposed against the accused person is Section 120B of the Indian Penal Code 1860. Your Honors, Section 120B states about the punishment for the offense of criminal conspiracy. So, in this case, there are main two ingredients of the offense of criminal conspiracy. The very first one is that there must be some intention, there must be an agreement between the accused person, and the second one is that there should be an illegal act or a legal act which is done by the illegal means. So the very first essential ingredient of criminal conspiracy is that there should be an agreement between two or more persons. However, in the present case, as such, there was no such agreement, either expressed or implied. All they were trying was to support the oppressed classes only. The accused persons were good friends and therefore in touch with each other. Therefore, the first ingredient completely fails to apply in the present case. And the second ingredient that I'm talking about, it says that such an agreement should be done to do an illegal act or to do a legal act by the illegal means. So, Your Lordship, in the present case, there isn't any sort of illegal act. The only illegal act the Counsel for the State has been trying to prove is that the voice raised against the government as an illegal act by the accused organization. All they were trying to do is to raise their voice only, and they stood by the people of the oppressed classes. And their right is protected, and this right is actually protected by Article 19, which talks about the freedom of right and expression. Rest of the things, that is basically the confessional statements made by the accused persons, as such, has no validity. Article 20 in the Constitution of India protects one's right against self-incrimination also. Also, Section 25 of the Indian Evidence Act itself says that no confession made to a police officer shall be proved as against the accused of any offense. No confession made to a police officer shall be proved as against a person accused of any offense. Therefore, it is humbly stated that the charge of Section 120B is completely inappropriate to apply on the accused person, and hence it should be struck down. Moreover, in the present case, there hasn't been any conspiracy, as I've said earlier, by the alleged persons other than the conferences related to the organization. Accused persons have been alleged of planning a bomb blast against their own country. But there is no criminal background found of any of the accused persons, no charges whatsoever, nor there's been any sort of criminal intent proved. As a matter of fact, they all were members of an organization which worked for the upliftment of the oppressed classes only. They all came together to work against the government's policy to divide youth in different religions and castes. They, under the work of association, also used to conduct skill development training programs in order to empower villagers residing nearby. It's nothing but a social obligation on their part, which has been proved hereby. Your Lordship, in the case of Kehar Singh and others versus State Delhi Administration in 1988, in that case, the gist of the offense of conspiracy, the court said, then lies not in doing the act or effecting the purpose for which the conspiracy is formed, nor in attempting to do them, nor in inciting others to the parties. Agreement is essential. Mere knowledge or even discussion of the plan is not per se enough. So in the instant case, nothing has as such been evidently declared if they in reality practiced any unlawful discussion or conspiracy. So in our opinion, there is no substance in the contentions made by the prosecutor under Section 120A of IPC. Offense of criminal conspiracy is committed when two or more persons agree to do or cause to be done an illegal act or legal act by illegal means. So the question for consideration in a case is, did all the accused have the intention and did they agree that the crime be committed? It would be enough for the offense of conspiracy when some of the accused merely entertained a wish, howsoever horrendous it may be, that offense be committed. Here, police had subsequently believed on false information provided by Guddu Singh, validity of which is thus questioned in front of this Honorable Court of Law. Mere on the basis of some information received by the Special Cell of Delhi Police, they questioned the innocence of the accused. Concentrating on the maxim of e incumbet probatio qui decet non negat. which, when explained in ordinary words, means that the onus to prove the guilt of the accused person lies upon the person who affirms it. That is, it is the prosecution's duty to prove the guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, rather than the accused. There is presumption of innocence for every individual unless he or she is proven guilty. So this rule prevents the harassment, embarrassment, and punishment of the innocent, responsible people who might be wrongfully or maliciously framed. In the present case, sir, which falls on the prosecutor, whereas accused is being unlawfully detained, and we should thus give the benefit of doubt to the accused person, sir. Therefore, it is humbly submitted that as such, there is no prima facie evidence against the accused persons, whereas only some confessional statements are recorded by the investigating officers as submitted by Rupinder Singh, Superintendent of Police, and the Chief Investigating Officer of NIA, New Delhi. Ergo, it is believed that the conviction under Section 120B cannot be sustained. Moving forward, Your Honors, Section 489 of the Indian Penal Code talks about using as genuine, forged, or counterfeit currency notes or banknotes. So, Section 489B says that whoever sells or buys or receives from any person any kind of forged or counterfeit currency notes or banknotes having reason to believe that same to be forged or counterfeit. In the present case, no such use of FICNs was made, first of all, neither it was intended to make under section. So that's why Section 489's application does not have any validity in the present case also. The intention of accused person should be clear. The intention of accused person is very much clear, as they were just working for the organization and they were carrying such bags only for the purpose of their organization to achieve the objective, their objective to attain the welfare of the people of the oppressed classes. So, in the case of Virender Singh versus State of Himachal Pradesh, it was submitted that the petitioner was falsely implicated with the case under Section 489B of IPC, as there was no evidence that petitioner was using it for unlawful purposes. In the present case also, there is no valid proof which shows that they were aware of the fact that the FICN, they were in the position of FICN. So this is for the carrying of any sort of unlawful activity as well. So moreover, in the case of Ashfaq versus State of UP, it was stated that mere possession would not be enough to convict for the offense under Section 489B. Also, in the case of B. Hasim versus State of Tamil Nadu, this is another case in which the same kind of protection is given to the accused. The next section which talks about which is put against the accused is Section 121 of IPC. It talks about waging or attempting to wage war or abetting the war against the government of India. So, Your Honors, we have a fundamental right to express ourselves against anything done wrong to us. Your Honors, the statements alleged to be made by the accused persons, that is, दुल्हन को सजाना पड़ेगा और दुल्हन को सजाने का वक्त आ गया है, are nothing but some extremist remarks made by the accused persons, while they are detailing their speeches to influence the people, to let a spark in the people to stand by for the welfare of the people of oppressed classes, to raise their voices, sir. Therefore, the statements does not at all show that if they were waging war or doing any sort of illegal act, or they were doing because they were just exercising their fundamental right of speech and expression. So with due respect, I would say that exercise of one's fundamental right of speech and expression against the government policy must not be confused with the offense of waging war against the government, sir. Lastly, sir, as we are running out of time, I directly focus on Section 123 of IPC, which talks about whoever by any act or by illegal omission conceals the existence of a design to wage war against the government of India. So the most important part of this provision is that the mens rea, in the form of either intention to facilitate waging of war or knowledge that it is likely to facilitate waging of war. In this case, the essential ingredient, that is intention. Intention is nowhere, sir. There is nowhere intention. Nevertheless, the above mentioned facts establishes that government knew about their association. So they were not at all hiding anything from the government, because the government already knew about the organization, that they are working against for the welfare of the people, and they are working against the government policies that seem oppressed for all of them. So that's why this is not any kind of conciliation. Moreover, in the case of Palvinder Singh Supra, the court held that in order to establish the charge under Section 201 of the Indian Penal Code, it is essential to prove that an offence has been committed. Mere suspicion that it has been committed is not sufficient. That the accused know or has reason to believe that such offence had been committed, and with the requisite knowledge and with the intent to screen the offender from legal punishment, causes the evidence thereof to disappear or gives false information respecting such offences would or having reason to believe. So, Your Honor, now I'd like my co-counsel to take the proceeding forward. Thank you, Your Lordship. Any questions, Your Lordship?
Do you want me to ask now or later on? I think let the speaker number 2 complete her argument, and then we will put.
Yes, that is what I would also suggest.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, sir.
Speaker 1, you may put your mic on mute.
Oh, sure.
Unmute your mic.
Sorry.
Speaker to unmute your mic, please.
Without any further ado, I'd like to move forward with the arguments if the court grants permission.
Please, go on.
Well, Your Honor. So charges under section 16, 17, 18, 20 of UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, where 16 states punishment for terrorist acts, 17 states punishment for raising funds for terrorist acts, 18 states punishment for conspiracy, etc., 20 states punishment for being member of terrorist gang or organization, which all of them fall short on inaccessible evidence by the prosecution. The organization, Your Honor, in the present case was a union working for the welfare of oppressed class, which is also protected under Article 19 of Indian Constitution, which protects citizens of India and grants them right to form associations or unions, with an exception that it must not be against public order, sovereignty, and integrity of India and morality. Nowhere does the association falls under the category of restrictions limiting the association as unlawful. Hence, on the basis of above-mentioned facts, it is hereby said that UAPA should not be involved where there is misregard to the policies, there's just mere disregard to the policies and peaceful protests, and is shown by the public in bona fide thinking of mind that it is subject to the risk of oppressed class, as in the present case, Your Honors. Your Honors, in the present case, under Section 16, they've laid down punishment for terrorist act. My argument states that whoever would intend to threaten the unity, integrity, security, or sovereignty of India, or to strike terror in the people or any section of the people in India or in any foreign country, does any acts by using bombs, dynamite, or any other explosive substances or inflammable substances or fire alarms, or lethal weapons, or poisons or noxious gases or other chemicals, or by any other substances of hazardous nature, is likely to cause death or injuries to any person or persons of loss or damage to destruction of property, or any destruction, should be punished therein. But, Your Honor, in the present case, all that has been proved is a peaceful protest by the accused persons. From Satyagraha to any law made by the government, there has been protests and disregard at so many instances that it can't be held therein, that because they spread awareness of the issue, there was some sort of terrorist act going on. They were considered terrorists then when fighting for their independence. They are considered terrorists now for protecting their rights, which is applicable to all the citizens of India and is their right under the Constitution of India. Monu, Samir, Kalu Mama, Peter and Suhail all were members of a lawful organization working for the welfare of oppressed class of West Bengal. Definition of unlawful activity as mentioned in UAPA in relation to an individual or association means any action taken by such individual or association, whether by committing an act or by words either spoken or written, or by signs, by visible representation or otherwise. In the present case, Your Lordship, there was no committing of act which was considered to be illegal either by the government or as such, neither there was any spoken or written agreement by the parties or any signs or any visible representation which as such if prosecution can prove was provided therein. Nowhere in the present case does it arrive unless we held the validity of confessions made during the inquiry, which cannot be held valid according to the Indian Evidence Act, Section 25, that the accused worked as a terrorist group working for an objective which challenges the security of the nation. All the confessions made by the accused during police custody are irrelevant on the ground protected by Section 25 of IEA, that is Indian Evidence Act, therefore. Also, Your Honor, Article 23 mandates that no person accused of an offense shall be compelled to be a witness against himself, that is self-incrimination. Thus, any admission or confession made during the police inquiry cannot be used, and there is no basis of Guddu Singh's statement unless the contrary can be proved by the state's prosecutor. Your Honor, I'd like your special attention on the case that the backgrounds were checked of all the alleged persons, that is Sameer, Kalu Mama, Monu, Peter, and Sohail, and there was no criminal background as such found. Whereas no credibility or corroboration of Guddu Singh was done by the police officers. Section 17 states punishment for raising funds for terrorist act. The court said in a case called Hitendra Vishnu Thakur versus State of Maharashtra that it is a sacrosanct principle of interpretation of penal provisions that these must be construed strictly and narrowly. This is a key to ensuring that a person who was not covered by a legislative ambit does not get roped into a penal provision of Section 17. The extent and reach of terrorist activity must travel beyond the effect of an ordinary crime and must not arise merely by causing disturbance of law and order or even public order, and must be such that it travels beyond the capacity of ordinary law enforcement agencies to deal with it under the ordinary penal law. All was found was FICNs by the possession of Monu and Sameer, who were traveling from Malda to Delhi. Nothing is proved, yet everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Presumption is high, whereas guilt, actus rea, has to be proved on who alleges. Although under the witnesses, when the witnesses were challenged and the confessions were made, if Your Honor would take the special attention to the confession made by Sameer and Monu, they said that they had no whatsoever knowledge or no whatsoever information on what they were carrying. All they were asked was to carry the bag from one place to another, not knowing of what they are carrying under, and which can be considered to be true as the present case scenario deals with a protest or rallies constructed by the association which were rebutting the laws made by the government of India for the oppressed class and for not devoiding the youth of the people, the youth of our country. Section 18 declares punishment for conspiracy, etc. Whoever conspires or attempts to commit or advocates, abets, advises the commission of a terrorist act or any act preparatory to the commission of a terrorist act shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years. There have to be a specific or particularized allegations. Vague suspicions can't be categorized with provisions of UAPA. Your Honors, you would have noticed the pattern herein. The paradigm which has been stated by the prosecution that they were found in the train and FICN were found in their possession, they were nowhere to be used. The death of Peter therein, they have said, was the destruction of evidence. I'd like to raise a point that did he die or was it suicide? Was a suicide can be construed or can be considered in a fact that it was destruction of evidence. A person's life, a person has lost his life, and what we are doing here, which I'd also like the court to know that as there not been proven of any such crime therein, and there have just been some ambiguous facts on the part of police and the NRA, a life has been taken away by the unlawful apprehension fallen on their head, and thus the prosecution alleges them of destruction of evidence. Section 22 constitutes punishment for being a member of terrorist gang or organization, that any person who is a member of a terrorist gang or terrorist organization involved in terrorist act shall be punishable with imprisonment and shall also be liable to the fine. Your Honors, in the present case, the association of accused persons worked in was in the knowledge of government. Government was not appreciating the revocations on the policies made by them. And why would the government, when their association was working for the betterment of the union, by working for the oppressed class would be appreciated by the government, Your Honors. Government is for the welfare of people, whereas here the policies were infringing with the development and welfare of people who belong to the oppressed class. The sanctions imposed by government was so disregarded by the association Samir and other accused worked under. They were described as militants by the government, whereas all they were doing was practicing their right to speech of expression against the government and the police, which can answer what grounds they had to suffice them with such charges as circumstantial evidence is unrelated facts that, when considered together, can be used to infer a conclusion about something unknown. Circumstantial evidence cannot be submitted unless the main grounds can be therein caught by them. Neither any Pulwama association was proved, neither there was any association with Lashkar-e-Taiba, as the prosecutor mentioned, was provided or hence proved by the prosecution side. Thus, circumstantial evidence is unrelated to the facts therein stated by them, and non-existence of a fact or event that party seeks to prove cannot be proved therefore. Here, more than circumstantial evidence, what appears is police trying to frame them of charges they weren't even made aware about, which also breaches the free and fair trial guaranteed under the Indian Constitution. In Ramavati Devi versus State of Bihar, it was held what evidentiary value or weight has to be attached to such statement must necessarily depend on the facts and circumstances of each particular case. In the case of Bodh Raj versus State of Jammu and Kashmir, Your Honors, court held that circumstantial evidence can be a sole basis for conviction provided the conditions stated as below is satisfied. And the conditions are the circumstances from which guilt is established must be fully proved. There was no circumstances which were proved therein, no as such proof by the police custody or by the police or the NI, just ambiguous story by the police talking about irrelevant grounds. Second ground says that second condition states that all the facts must be consistent with the hypothesis of the guilt of accused. There was no hypothesis, there's no story, Your Honors. All what has been there is innocence has been caught up by the attention of police officers just because they were protesting or they were practicing their legal right. Next condition states that circumstances must be of conclusive nature and tendency, which falls short on the ground as there has been no connection proved therein, no conclusion of the nature and tendency, no proven on their association, and all what has been appeared is the possession of FICN, which is also not proved that was used in illegal way or in an illegal manner because the accused person did not even have the knowledge of it and they were oblivious of the fact. Circumstances should to a moral certainty actually exclude every hypothesis except the one proposed to prove. Circumstances are nothing but coincidences in the present case, Your Honor. Mere possession is not a crime. And as per A1 and A2, that is accused 1 and accused 2, Samir and Monu, they didn't even know that the bag had FICN. If they had knowledge and were found in the possession therein henceforth, then a crime must have been implied on them. Now, my next legal issue is no procedure was followed, adequate and justifiable in the present. No route to counsel whatsoever.
I think your time is over, isn't it? You are taking extra time.
Can I sum up in a minute?
Actually, she has a couple of more minutes. Sir.
Okay, thank you.
We have
go on.
Sir.
May I, Your Honor?
Please.
Much obliged. So, Your Honor's police raided the Faraka Express on the information provided by Guddu Singh under, as they said, 161 CRPC. Objective and purpose of Section 161 is to collect evidence regarding commission of an offence by examining and recording the statements of the witness, material in respect of the commission of the offence. I do not think police actually examined the state of facts mentioned by Guddu Singh, who said that a secret information was provided to them. I'd like to propose a question on the examination made by the police and herein on the credibility of the secret information. This is a criminal trial going on. Innocent people's life is at stake. What is secret in a criminal trial that they cannot prove that who regard to the present case provided them with such information? How can police put such insufficient information in so high regards? What is so behind and what we question as respondents in the court of law? Furthermore, under Article 338(3) of Constitution and Order 3192 of CPC, a defendant cannot be convicted if only incriminating evidence is his or her confession, which is again not submitted as protected under Section 25 of IEA, that is Indian Evidence Act. And Your Honor, our judiciary considers the fact that let 100 go unpunished, but never punish an innocent person. The right of accused persons at different stages includes the right of an arrested person before his or her trial begins, right of accused in India during a court trial, and after his or her trial is completed. The only person who was produced before a judicial magistrate within 24 hours of arrest was Kallu Mama. Nonetheless, neither Monu nor Samir, in any of the circumstances, was put before the magistrate, and nonetheless, no such questions were asked by them. To sum up my argument, I'd say a maxim, and then I'd move forward to the prayer. E incumbit probatio qui dicet, non qui negat. That is, the burden of proof lies upon the person who affirms, but not the one who denies. And police or the NIA does not have any such evidence. The technical evidence or any such evidence presented by them falls short because they were already associated with each other through the union and the working of the association for the people of West Bengal. And such, the technical evidence fails on that ground. Therefore, submitting my prayer. Therefore, in the light of the issues raised, arguments advanced, and authorities cited, Your Honours, may this honourable court be pleased to acquit Samir and others of the offence as charged upon them, and in order pass any other order it may deem fit in the interest of justice, equity, and good conscience. Thank you, Your Lordship.
So basically, your main ground of defense is that the confession extracted from the accused is barred by Section 25 of the Evidence Act. No person can be made to depose against itself. There was no meeting of mind. Hence, the statement of the accused about causing disturbance and causing blasts at the Pulwama no longer sustains, right? So this is your main ground. So let us move to the prosecution. If they want to rebut this, what do you have to say about Section 25 and 120B, that is the agreement of mind for causing such offense?
Your Lordship, I wanted to question the counsel that let's say even if the accused were unaware of the FICN currencies they were holding in their suitcase, however, it is evident from their confessions that they were aware that Sohail had planned to blow a bomb against Indian Army convoy, and they used to transfer the money in past cases for the commissions they used to receive. It was
Is it so? Is it so? Is there any material fact on the record which shows that he has transferred the money in the past also? Is there anything?
We have their confessions.
Can you point it out? Confessions? Okay.
Yes.
You are relying on the confessions that they used to transfer the money in the past also, right?
And it was held in the case of Firozuddin Bashiruddin versus State of Kerala that all conspirators did not be aware of every detail of their actions. So what mattered is that there existed a central criminal object about which everyone was aware of. So since they were all were aware of the main objective, why was there no criminal conspiracy?
Okay.
There is a question which I would be posing to the speaker one who is for the prosecution.
Let us first go with the rebuttal money.
Okay.
I think prosecutor, the speaker 2 of the prosecution would like to say anything. Do you want to say anything? That's all. Now money can put question to the defense, please.
Yeah, the speaker one, when you were addressing the argument, you had said that most of the evidence had been destroyed. Now, if you are yourself saying that most of the evidence was destroyed, then what is the basis on which you are claiming conviction of the accused? And secondly, how do you come out of Section 25 Evidence Act?
Your Lordship, when I say that most of the evidence were destroyed...
It is not a question to you. Let the defense answer this question. Your question is from the prosecution?
Yes, I am asking from the prosecution as to how they would come out of Section 25 of the Evidence Act. That is the thrust of argument that was put forth by the accused.
Yes, yes, yes.
So how do you come out of it? Section 25, are you aware of Section 25 of Evidence Act?
Yes, Your Lordship.
So how do you come out of it? And would Section 46 of the UAPA Act have any applicability to the case at hand?
That would be highly technical money. Let them revert on Section 25. बच्चे हैं, ज़्यादा उस तरह के क्वेश्चन ना पूछें. Section 25 is relevant because Section 25 says that any confessional statement taken before a police during the course of detention is not valid. What do you have to say, prosecution, please? Okay, let us move to defense. Do you want to challenge that the accused Monu and Samir were carrying FICN?
We do not want to challenge, as it has been proved by CFSL that they were carrying FICN. Though we would like to challenge where they came from, because if they did not know where it came from, and from the grounds established by police and NIA, as they've said, that bomb blast was thus apprehended on our country, I like to prove it upon the facts that
So when you are admitting that they were carrying FICN,
yes, sir.
Is it not an offense under Section 489?
So the mere possession is not an offense. If it was found with machinery, whereas that they forfeited the notes, then it is an offense, and no such machinery was found on the behalf. Thus, it is not an offense.
Carrying FICN, if you are admitting that they were carrying FICN, the word FICN is itself a fake currency notes.
Fake
so
currency.
When they were aware that they are carrying FICN, mere carrying an FICN is an offense under Section 489, if I am not
Your
wrong.
Honor, I understand your question, Your Honor, but to answer in my behalf, they did not know itself that they were that the bag they were carrying were filled with FICN, whereas later when it was proved by the police and the CFSL, it was found that they were carrying FICN. Whereas the accused did not have knowledge of it, neither they had the intent of it, and nothing has been.
More
Yes.
specific. Now tell me, if
Yes,
they
sir.
knew, so you
Yes.
want to say that they were not aware about the content of the bag. Is it so?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can anyone carry a bag without knowing the contents of the bag? Particularly from a person who has made a statement in public that Dulhan ko sajana padega, and he was angry with the state.
I understand your question. Thank you, Your Honor. So, in my defense, I'd like to say that they were all member of association. When we are a member of association, when we are a part of union, and we are amongst our friends, there's this trust which build up amongst each other, and understanding that the purpose of it is lawful, and the purpose we're doing it for was the working for the oppressed class. And that I'd like to say, Your Honor.
Had I been in your position, I would have
Yes, sir.
simply denied that the notes were FICN. I had no knowledge that the notes were FICN. Why not you put a story? If you are representing an accused that I gave loan to, he may have given loan to Kallu and Kallu has just returned, they were not aware about the fact that this is FICN. So once you are admitting the fact that it is FICN,
Right, sir.
so there is a mens rea. And particularly, and moreover, what is your another argument is that you are not aware of the contents of the bag. So this is a very first-class circumstantial evidence against your accused. That he was carrying a bag without knowing the contents of it. It might be having some bombs and anything else. Okay.
May I speak, Your
Please.
Honor? May I have a moment to speak? So they were not experts. CFSL was. They were not experts. A normal human like me, myself, I wouldn't know if the notes are forfeited or FICN for that matter or original, because I don't have the expertise in it. Even if they knew, let's suppose a case, even if they knew that they were carrying the notes, it could be for the donations for the rallies. They were getting funded for the rallies. People fund in the organization when they're interested in it. They've caused awareness.
Your argument is good. Your argument is good. But it had been better if you would have argued that they were not aware about the fact that these notes are FICN. Anyways,
Thank
do
you.
you have any question?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
To the speaker number 2 who was just answering.
Yes.
Now, are you disputing the telephonic conversation and the telephones that have been mobile phones that have been received or recovered? Are you disputing that or not?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
You are disputing that.
Yes, Your Honor. I even have a section to protect it, if I may speak.
Yes, please.
So the validity and authentication was not proved under Section 65B of IT Act, which has to be proved. And just for the matter of fact that they were talking to each other, knowing that they have a background together, does not constitute an offense. So just telephonic conversation that they had their numbers and they were in continuous interaction with each other. I'm sure that we all are, if we're talking to our friends on the daily basis, we all contact each other and the conversations thereof can be proved. So, but any authentication of what they were talking about, the verbal statements, was not authenticated under Section 65B of IT Act. Thus, I'm disputing and contradicting their allegation, Your Honor, if that suffices your answer.
And what would be the relevance of Section 46 of Unlawful Activities Act, which actually says, I'll explain what it is. It talks about admissibility of evidence collected through the interpretation of communications. So, during those conversations, your talks were intercepted, and there is something incriminating against you.
Sir, I apologize for my lack of knowledge in the current section, but as for my knowledge and my attempt, if I can...
No.
The
only electronic evidence on the record is, that call record. There is no recording of conversation.
Right.
So call record, for that, to that extent, it is admissible. So this only proves that they were in contact with each other, and the defense rightly say that they can remain, they are friends, they know each other, so they can be in contact with each other.
True.
But the purpose of waging war against India is not proved. Their contention is that. Now, yes. Let us move to prosecution. Section 27 says, Section 27 of Evidence Act says that the subsequent to the confessional statement, if there is any recovery, then that part of confession will be considered as evidence. Now, do your case falls under Section 27? Prosecution. प्रोसिक्यूशन बेचारे कुछ कर भी नहीं सकते, इनका केस ही इतना कमजोर है बेचारे, क्या
Probably they have nothing more to say on it.
इनको जो केस मिला उसमें उन्होंने they have represented very well. Do you guys want to say anything? Let me start with the prosecution. Otherwise, other than my question, do you want to say anything more?
I don't think they want to say.
Your Honor, if I may add a rebuttal, if I'm allowed to.
There is nothing to rebut. What do you want to rebut now?
The destruction of evidence.
There is no destruction of evidences per record, I guess.
The prosecution has questioned that we've destructed the evidence.
Yeah, please go on.
So, Your Honor, as they've said that we have destructed the evidence, the destruction is nowhere proved. And if Kalu Mamman was arrested, how can he destruct the evidence thereof? If he was in police custody and the statement they've taken is of Iqbal Khan, who was himself a member of the association they were all working for. Then even Iqbal Khan, and he cannot say the statement. That's all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Right. मेरे को तो समझ में नहीं आया एविडेंस था क्या जो डिस्ट्रक्ट हुआ. Anyways, thank you very much. You have done very well argued, both prosecution and defense. Let's hand it over to the court master, please.
Thank you, participants. You have been really great with your presentations. And I'll request the honorable judges to mark the score. I'd just like to reiterate that all the participants would get a score out of 100 each. So for each team, you have 200 marks in total. So I'd request that as soon as possible, you can send me via WhatsApp or email the scores that you are going to give to them.
Yes, that will.
We'll do that.
Sir. All right, sir. So if you think that the session should be over and there is nothing else to be asked, then I'll just proceed with a closure of the session, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you, and all the best, participants.
All the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.